Hello, this is Law and Other TV, and I am Anima. In one of our sessions on lease, I talked about the elements of a valid contract, of a valid lease. Now, I talked about the first and second element of a valid lease. The first, certainty of terms, and the second, certainty of commencement date and duration of the lease. So today we're going to be looking at the other elements of a valid lease, like the elements that make a lease valid. The absence of these elements in a lease makes it void and unenforceable. So the third element of valid lease is certainty of parties. Now, in a lease agreement, the parties must be described and clearly identified. The expression landlord and lessee must be used to avoid denial and confusion. Their addresses must be clearly stated as well. Their names, the expression landlord for the owner of the property, lessee for the person to whom the lease is granted. So this element must be included in the lease agreement to make it valid. Now, the fourth element of a valid lease is certainty of property. Now, for a lease to be valid, the property to which the landlord has leased to the lessee must be clearly stated. The kind of property it should be stated in the lease agreement. For instance, the survey plan number of the property can also be referred to in the lease agreement. So in case the property becomes subject of dispute, they can refer to the property in question. So the fifth element of a valid contract is exclusive possession. Now, if there is no exclusive possession, then there is no valid lease. The landlord has to ensure that the lessee enjoys quiet possession of the property. The lessee cannot suffer disturbance from the landlord, because that will make the lease agreement invalid. So the lessee has to enjoy exclusive possession of the property that he has obtained by reason of lease. Now, the sixth element of a valid lease is that the lease must be properly created. How can a lease be properly created? It is very important for you to know that in law, a lease is usually for a term of 3 years and above. So it must be by deed. It must be signed, sealed, and delivered by the parties in question. So they must sign it, must be sealed and delivered by the parties in question. Now, the seventh element of a valid lease is that the rent must be clearly stated. Now, the rent is the consideration for which the lessee has the right to possession of the property. Now, the rent could be monetary, but it's not always monetary, but it must be stated in the lease agreement what consideration the property has been given for. So the rent must be stated in the lease agreement. So if you want to enter into a lease agreement with anybody, you have to ensure that these elements are present. There must be certainty of terms, the commencement date and the duration of the lease must be included. There has to be certainty of the parties, certainty of property, exclusive possession. The lease must be properly created. It must be by deed because it's 3 years and above. It must be properly created, and the rent has to be included in the lease agreement. That is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. This is Law and Other TV, and I am Anima.